Okay, so now I'm going to walk you through how this code works. Um, and actually, as is typical in programming, once you use a functional style, what we're going to do is define our functions up top, and then at the bottom will be where all the work happens. So as you read code, so far in this class, you've always just been able to read from top to bottom, and that sort of just tells you what's going to happen. Um, what's going to happen with procedures is you're going to read the definitions of all the procedures, and then at the very bottom, we're going to read what actually happens. So, well, I'll practice that right now. So I can show you this code down here uses some things you don't know yet, but I'll just explain it. It says here, code below, you shouldn't need to modify it, okay? So first of all, it's importing a bunch of new functions from a library called random. And then it says for function in square, triangle, circle, or smiley. Now, what are those functions? We're going to have to go up top to find out what they are soon. For each of those functions, we're going to clear the screen. We're going to write, I am drawing function. This dot notation says dot name. That's special code for, say, the name of the function. So drawing 15 of whatever this thing is. And then for I in range 15, so that just means do this 15 times. Lift up the pen, go to a random point, a random XY coordinate between negative 400 and 400, put the pen down, and run the function with a random value between 5 and 300. So that's what the program does, but what on earth are square, triangle, circle, and smiley? Well, to find that out, oops, I forgot to add star here. Star as well. To find that out, we have to go back up to the top of the code and read the definitions of those functions. So def stands for define function. You can think of it as defining what this function means. A function definition begins with the keyword def, the name of the function, which will be how you call it in the future, and then parentheses, and any arguments, which are like variables that get passed to the function. Okay, arguments to the function. Now in this case, square gets a length argument. Now let's watch what square does. We define a new variable, sides. So at this point we have a length, which has been passed to us, and sides, which we are defining as 1. While sides is less than 4, we move forward whatever our length is. We turn right 90 degrees, and we add 1 to sides. So that's going to run, sides is going to be 2. It's going to run again, draw the second side, 3, 4. So it's going to draw the 4 sides of a square, and then it is going to stop. Just to show you how this works, I'm going to go ahead and comment out my code, and I'm just going to call square once. So if I called square with the value 100, and that's all this did, go ahead and save that and run it, I should see 1 square of width 100 at the very start of my program. Perfect. If I change the square to 300, well here let's call square 100, square 200, and square 300. I'll save that and run it. It's going to draw 1, 2, 3 squares. So just to walk back through the code one more time, what's happened is we've set length to 100. We've gone through, moved forward that length, turned right 4 times. Then we've set it to 200. So if we follow the code, when it calls square 200, what does that mean? It means we come up here, we set length to 200, and then we move through the 4 sides. Great. And then we call square 300. We come back up, set it to 300, move through the sides, and we got those 3 squares. All right. So that's very nice. If you look at my code, what it does is makes squares of all different sizes in random intervals. I'm going to go ahead and comment out that. If I run the code now, worth noticing, nothing will happen. Let's go ahead and run the module. And nothing is drawn. And that's because I've defined the functions, but I haven't called them. So now if I call it square 500, we get a square of size 500, which is too big to fit on the screen. I can call those other functions like triangle 100, and you'll notice all that triangle does right now is print out the message the triangle isn't working. That's because you have to write triangle. Another note, if you call square without an argument, it will complain. The argument is the number that goes between the parentheses, and that's because I have defined square to need a length. So if I don't give square an argument, I get this complaint that it needs one. If you give square 2 arguments, you'll get the complaint that square needs 1. So square has to be called with just 1 argument, and then it works. You can call square as many times as you would like. For I in range 100, 150, go by 5s, square. So what I'm doing now is just looping through all the numbers between 100 and 150. Oops. Apparently I messed that up. Oh, there it goes. It's now going to slowly draw all of these possible squares, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay. I am not going to watch that finish. So your job in this class will be to write these functions. Notice they take a length, just as square does, which should be variable. And then the function goes as long as it's indented. So if I were to add a second line to triangle and go ahead and run this, nothing happens at first, but if I call triangle 100, I'll see triangle isn't yet working, second line. And each time I call triangle, that same code will run. So this is where triangle is very handy, is that it's going to change each time. So now I would want to go ahead and write some code that maybe moves forward, does some kind of turn. So here's an example. This is not going to succeed, but if I move forward length, left 90, forward length, let's go ahead and run that. And now I call triangle 200. It's going to still print out those lines, but now it also draws. So triangle 100. Now it drew more lines. Triangle 50. It drew 2 more lines. So obviously this doesn't draw a triangle yet because I'm not doing the exercise for you. But we are on the way. If I were to leave my new triangle code, which isn't so great, and I'm going to go ahead and uncomment my original test code, which is how you can see everything running. Format, uncomment, save, and run. I'm going to see it move to a bunch of random spots and draw squares. It's going to draw 15 squares. And when it's done, it's going to try to draw 15 triangles. By the way, you might find this a little annoying. You could change the number 15 to a smaller number, and you won't have to see so many squares while you're testing your code. So I said do not modify, but you can modify a little carefully in order to make it easier to test. Here goes the triangles. Now we'll see that my triangle code seems to change the heading all the time, and of course I'm only drawing 2 lines. So we are on the way to drawing a triangle, but of course we are not yet done, so you would want to work out how to make this actually work to draw a proper triangle, and the circle code doesn't work at all. All right, so there you go. That's the basics. Here, by the way, is where I could change it to only draw 3 of each number. And you would want to modify your code to actually have some movement so that the turtle does something. And you can continuously save and run your code to see it work. Now it's just going to do 3 at a time. You see my triangle code is not so good. My circle code is even worse. My star code doesn't exist. So I will leave you to it. Again, download this. You're going to change the functions. And if you keep my code, it should draw 15 of each shape in a random spot at random sizes. For testing purposes, you can call the functions one at a time. You have lots of practice calling functions because everything you've been doing in Turtle is a function call, like forward, left, right. You have never before defined a function, right? So here we are defining a function. We can give it any name we want. We give it a length. We give it sides. One thing I should warn you, because I started with shapes and it was simple to do it, I just defined these functions with the names of the shapes. When we get a little further in the course, I will tell you that is a bad idea. Functions should typically have verbs as names, like draw square or draw triangle. I'm going to leave this done badly for now, but I couldn't leave it without warning you. That is not best practice. It was easy shorthand for a first exercise. But in general, in your code, once you get a little further along, you will really want to cement the habit of using verbs for functions. And that's because functions are procedures, right? It's a list of things you do, and doing is represented by verbs in language. So you always want to name a function a verb. Anyway, sorry I did that wrong in the first exercise, but it was just easier to make it print the thing out. And anyway, it seemed simple when I made it, but in the future, you're going to use verb names for your functions, and you'll find that I harass you about it. Now, when I harass you, you can say, well, Mr. Hinkle, you did it wrong once, and you will be right. I did it wrong, and I'm sorry. All right, hop to it.